red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Is this the real life? Is this just fantasy? God damn it! My life has value! It's time to ask yourself what you believe.
Mass murder, torture, perjury, embezzlement, fraud, deception, treason. These are just a few of your many crimes against humanity. You will not win this war, for you are fighting the very essence of humanity.
Hi, welcome to Truther Talk. I'm April Boden. And I'm Virstyne Henry. You can find us at www.truthertees.com and check out our store at shop.truthertees.com, where we have our T-shirt, The Conspiracy Realist, available for purchase. You buy 3 shirts, you get a free copy of Official Stories by Liam Sheff, our frequent guest, Liam Sheff. And on today's show, we have a jam-packed show today because we brought in Sarah Sotomayor, our friend who we've had in several times before, to do the intro with us, because she's an expert on vaccines and all that. And we're going to be talking to Marcella Piper-Terry later in the show, who runs the vaxtruth.org site. And then at the end of the show, we're going to be talking to Erica Goldson, who is a student, a valedictorian of her school, and she had a lot to say about the education system, had a viral video going on. So anyway, so we're jam-packed. We're jam-packed.
For our back-to-school special, right?
It's our
back-to-school.
Exactly. It's our back-to-school special. And so welcome back, Virstyne. We've been on hiatus for a little while because Virstyne was coming back from Taiwan, and now here she is.
We're good, yeah. It's so surreal. It's so surreal to be back. It's weird. I mean, it's great, but it's just very, it's not, I'm in a different country now. And,
right.
And my friends and my family, and you were involved, April, they threw me a welcome back surprise party, which I was really, really shocked. I had no idea.
You were surprised.
I was really surprised.
Yeah.
It didn't surprise me, but I was really shocked. I couldn't believe it. So that was really touching. I'm really blessed to have such great friends and family. So.
Well, it's weird to have you here. We've been doing all these shows via Skype, where we've been talking all the time and stuff like that, and then all of a sudden you're here in our studio, which is in my house, in my kids' room, and so in front of the computer. But I mean, it's just it's been so long, so it's strange. But yeah. So how did it go? I know you had a flight that took like a day and a half. Did you have any TSA run-ins?
Oh no, thank God. I was praying that I didn't have to deal with that stuff. I just wasn't in the mood to cry. I think it was a little over a day, and I had to spend the night in Shanghai airport. I slept on the bench with my sleeping bag. Yeah, a homeless person. It's really funny. And the idea of going through customs and all that. It was drama. So I didn't have any TSA stuff, to make a long story short.
Oh, well, that's good. Yeah, the testicle squeezing agents. Well, yeah, we're hoping that that'll be our next T-shirt. Just because they're a little teaser out there. We're hoping that we can get that out. I don't know when, but
you're working on it.
Yeah, we're due for another one.
We're
due for another shirt. Yeah, we love our first shirt, The Conspiracy Realist, but we're due to have another one, and we don't like the TSA. So just to say that. Just to give you a little teaser. We're not going to tell you any more about it.
Yeah.
So it's a jam-packed show. Very intelligent, strong women on our show today. Exciting to have them in here. And so please welcome to our show Sarah. She's been waiting on the line. Sarah Sotomayor. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, April. Hi, Virstyne.
Hi, Sarah. So we've had you on the show 2 times before. The first time we gave you a full-length interview where you told us about your experience with Gardasil, or after receiving the HPV vaccine, Gardasil, and how you've been how you basically had a pharmaceutical nightmare before you started healing yourself naturally, and you're writing a blog about that now. So tell us where we can go find your blog.
It's at www.sarahshealingjourney.wordpress.com.
Okay, great. So you just started that like a month or so ago, and you're just kind of talking about the things. So how are you doing today?
I'm doing all right.
You're doing okay?
Yeah, just a bit of detoxing, so that's always a bit draining, but doing it pretty good.
Yeah, you have a lot to detox.
Yeah.
So you had the Gardasil vaccine when you were 13. You're 19 now, and you're still dealing with it because it wasn't just, at first it was the Gardasil vaccine, and then it was like all the pharmaceuticals that they gave you to try and fix the problem that the Gardasil vaccine caused, right?
Right. And they didn't even know what the problem was, so they just pretty much threw drugs at me and see what stuck.
Right. Yeah.
Makes me so angry.
Yeah, and for those who haven't listened to our previous shows where we've talked to Sarah, please go check out her blog so you can get up to date on who she is. And she's also been on Robert Scott Bell show and a couple times, and we're really happy to have her back. So Sarah, I told you just before the show, I said we're going to have Marcella Piper Terry, who runs VaxTruth.org, and they have the campaign, the No Shots, No School, Not True, where they do the billboards all over the country.
Yes.
And so you live in Pennsylvania. What's the vaccine laws in Pennsylvania that you're aware of for going to school? And do you know?
Well, you can put a religious exemption down, which is what my sister has to do because she's still in school. And
okay.
Yeah. So it's pretty easy to fill out. We haven't had any problems with doing that, but I've heard of people, having problems with that around the country, and now with the law with Dr. Pan to try to make you get a doctor's exemption when the doctors don't even know what's in a vaccine or what it does.
Yeah. Yeah, Dr. Pan, you're talking about the guy from California, right? The one who's doing the AB 2109?
Yes.
Yeah, so what we're talking about, audience, listeners, we don't know what we're talking about.
Talking in code?
Yeah, we're talking in code here, is that each state has a different set of rules when it comes to the vaccines that you have to take in order to go to school. And in some places there's mandates now to be a healthcare worker. There's mandates for certain jobs nowadays. It's very strange, but each state has a different set of rules, and there's 3 types of exemptions that you can get in order to go to school. So we want to talk about those, obviously, because it's that time of year. It's back to school. People are going back to school right now, or they're just started. And so in the weeks to come, the schools are going to be saying, oh, your kid needs X amount of vaccines in order to attend school. And the campaign that Marcella has is basically trying to inform people that that's not true and that there are exemptions. And so you can either get a medical exemption. Every state has a medical exemption, which means you have a pre-existing condition that precludes you from being able to take vaccines. So in other words, they know that if you take it, it's going to affect you because you have, like Sarah, you have an on-record reaction.
Right.
And my son as well, Aiden, who had a reaction to vaccines that resulted in his regression into autism. That would be a medical exemption, but you would have to get a doctor to basically say that they record it. And as we've talked about before, a lot of doctors are scared to do that, right? I mean, they're a lot of the mainstream medical doctors, either they're afraid or they just are in denial and they won't do it. And so Sarah brought up Dr. Pan. Dr. Pan he's an assemblyman from California. We're in California, and Sarah is in Pennsylvania. She seems to know more about it than I do. So what do you know about it, Sarah? What do you know about this bill?
I just know that he's trying to get it passed so that if you have a medical exemption or philosophical exemption or religious exemption, you have to get it passed through a doctor. Right. And they're going to supposedly sit you down and tell you about the cons and pros of what is in a vaccine would help or not help with. And basically they're just going to be like, vaccines are good and not getting one is bad. Because that's
yeah, totally. I was going to say that. They're not going to tell you the cons, really.
And they're not even taught about it in school. That's pretty much what they're taught. And I've heard of people graduating, like, for a pharmaceutical degree or whatever, and they're told, you can research this on your own, but this is pretty much all we're giving you.
Right. Yeah, and so that's what it is. So there's a medical exemption, and then as Sarah mentioned, in her state there's a religious exemption. So you can say it goes against your religious beliefs. And when you know what's in a vaccine, when you know there's like aborted fetal tissues and all these
kidneys,
bunch of kidneys and aluminum and all these things,
polysorbate 80.
Right, you can understand how that would go against a lot of religions, like if you're Jewish, that's not kosher. These foods are, I mean, it's not a kosher ingredients, and it's, if you know, have a Catholic belief, they don't believe in abortion, and these are aborted fetal tissues. So there are certain religious exemptions that you can take in some states. There's only 2 states, I believe, that only allow medical exemption.
Okay.
There are 2 states that you can only get a medical exemption, and in each state it's different. So like Sarah said, it's not that hard to get a religious exemption in Pennsylvania, but there are some states where it's very difficult. Like, from what I understand, New York is really hard to get you can't, they only have religious and medical exemptions, and it's really hard to get a medical exemption, and it's almost as hard to get a religious exemption over there.
Jeez.
So some people have to hire a lawyer.
Wow.
Yeah, and here in California, what Sarah brought up is we do have what's called a philosophical exemption, and that's the easiest one. You can just say that it goes against your personal beliefs or your philosophy to have your child vaccinated, and you sign off on this form. And how it's always been in the past is that there's these forms that you fill out, and you just say, I don't believe in it. You check that box, and then you sign off of it. You hand it to the school nurse, and it's done. So what they're trying to do, what this Dr. Pam, what this douchebag wants to do, is he wants to take that and basically make it so that you have to go to a medical doctor, and the doctors that you can go to, you can't go to a naturopath, you can't go to a homeopath, you have to go to a mainstream medical doctor and basically find one who will give you who will tell you the truth, because they all know, if they claim they don't know, then they're lying. They all know that that vaccines aren't safe, perfectly safe. They know that.
Perfectly safe, yeah.
Right. They're either lying or they're in total denial. And so you have to go to them, and they have to, like Sarah said, they will weigh the pros and cons, quote, quote, and tell you what the con is for not getting it done. And then if you still sign off on it, see, this is my concern, is that if you still sign off on it after they've given you the supposed pros and cons, then is that going to make the parents look like bad parents and have CPS come to their door? They're going to start, these doctors are going to start calling child services on them. You know, right. I mean, I think we're having Marcel on the show, and I think she wrote an article, or she posted an article the other day, we'll ask her about it when she gets on, about a mother who was told basically either vaccinate your child or we'll send CPS to your home. Maybe she was just given that as an option. So it's basically going to be forced on them. They're calling it a philosophical exemption, but it's like you still have a philosophical exemption, but I don't believe that you do. You know, we talked a little bit about this.
It's like, jump off this bridge or I'll shoot you.
Exactly. Jump off this bridge or I'll shoot you. And we talked about this in a previous show, Virstyne and I, because we right after the Rob Snyder video, and he came out against it. We were really impressed with what he had to say. And so maybe we'll do a part 2 on this and end up talking later as we get closer to the election and see if we can get someone to come in and talk about this some more. But anyway, so that's what we're going to be talking about, is vaccine exemptions and mandates, and as people are going back to school today. And Marcella knows a lot about that. And we also want to talk about, like, the education system in general. So, Sarah, you're 19, so you just graduated from high school a few years ago. So what was your experience as a student before you got sick?
It was just, your basic education, not really anything interesting, things that would, just put you to sleep, like history. Like, you just wouldn't want to go research that after going to a history class.
Right. And and those who don't know Sarah's really, really smart and not a lazy person. I mean, she's definitely someone who enjoys learning, clearly.
Right.
And has a very high intellect. So it's not that you didn't like learning, you found the way that they
were teaching is
right. Yeah, the way that they were teaching, what they were teaching, is just like there were so many blanks that weren't filled in. Like with history, like nobody talked about paperclip during World War II afterwards. Or the Bush family funding them. So
and it's also, it's also to me, I hated history because it was also just like a very white male perspective. I didn't see where I fit in. I think most people don't really see where they fit into history.
Right.
Even even, like I said, I think it's like from a white male perspective, but I think that even other white men didn't really see where they fit in now that I think about it. I just think it was, you know, you're intentionally made not to want to learn and want to research stuff, because as a teacher I even feel that, like I'm disgusted with the education system in America and in Taiwan, the same thing. You know, it's not really, they're not teaching these kids to critically think or to seek and find or get them excited. It's just they're training them to basically be robots.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, and I even learned more because at one point I had to do homeschooling. So we had a couple things cut back, like certain like homework assignments or whatever, because of the amount of pain I was in and the doctor's appointments. So as soon as I started to get better, and I still wasn't well enough to go to school, and after I would be done with school, because I would actually do it on Skype, and I would just start reading other things, and I learned more by just teaching myself and reading what I wanted to learn. I mean, I wasn't going to learn about astrology or vaccines or philosophy in school.
Right. Yeah, that's true. I remember, I mean, I wasn't a great student at all. And I don't think it was because I was lacking intelligence. I think I found it boring. I didn't find it stimulating.
Torture.
Yeah,
it's torture. It's just like, I feel like, even as a teacher, I feel like it's a prison almost.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some people have used that analogy a lot, like it's a prison that you can't get out of.
Even the way they build schools, it's just like the architecture of the buildings nowadays, the way that they build schools. There's not a lot of trees, there's not a lot of greenery, the windows are dark, the doors, like, when I taught in the inner city, I'm like, the doors are metal on them because the computer rooms, we had computers in the rooms, and it was just, like, psychologically, I mean, just everything, the desks were just very, like, you know, all look the same, and it was so...
Yeah, it's like, totally.
So, I can't think of the word, I don't know, very,
like, conformative, like, just...
Yeah, conformative or just very depressing.
Yeah,
it's depressing being in that environment as a teacher and a student.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, it's are you familiar, Sarah, with Charlotte Iserby's work?
No.
Deliberate Dumbing Down of Society. Yeah, we're not going to be interviewing her today. I would like to interview her. I would love to, but she's very hard to get in touch with, from what I'm told. And she worked in government. She worked in the Department of Education at one point, and basically had written this book called The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America, and it was about how she found the documents that this whole agency was set up in order to actually cause a dumbing down and basically remove any type of teaching that resulted in critical thinking, but rather more like behavioral, like Skinner kind of behavioral therapy stuff, where it was just basically teaching them how to obey.
Become an obedient citizen.
Exactly.
A working citizen.
Yeah, basically, you know. And so, have you seen this girl's video, Erica Goldson, who we're going to have on later in the show? Have you?
Yeah,
seen
I thought it was amazing.
Yeah,
I would love for somebody to say that at my graduation, because everybody, I just didn't get it, because everybody's like, oh, so excited about graduating from high school, and I'm just like, big whoop, like, what did I learn?
That's not really...
Yeah,
but then I guess I was excited to graduate from high school because I wanted to get the heck out.
That's the only reason I was excited.
But I'm like you're like, I'm free, or so you think, and then you go right into college. It's just it's a slightly more, I don't know, freer prison. You can party on the weekends, or you can set your schedule, you know, you can do time in between, you know.
I had one teacher in high school tell me that college was basically just high school with ashtrays.
Or maybe bongs. And,
now you're allowed to smoke or whatever. I mean, it's just...
That's awesome. That's really great.
Yeah, I thought that was really fun. But I don't know. I thought college was, like you say, it was a little bit better, but You can
social experience. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't remember anything I learned in college.
I can't say I remember anything.
Like academically, I learned a lot socially. I remember that. You know,
Yeah.
Growing up, dealing with people,
Right.
being exposed to different kinds of people, and
Yeah.
you know, ideas. I remember more of the creative stuff because I was like a theater arts major. I remember, you know, that stuff.
Right.
I guess I remember the stuff that I had interest in because all the other stuff was just like,
Right.
I don't remember now how I used it. So.
The participation kind of exercises and things where you actually had to do stuff, but rather than just reading from a book. I don't remember any of that stuff. And you know, I remember because we took theater in school, and I had to take this course on. It was like setting up stages, it was props or whatever, and they had chapters and chapters on different types of wood. And I remember thinking, God, this is so boring. Like, I don't, you know, it was like all the different types of wood you can use to build a set, and I was like, oh, good Lord. Like, I really, and it's not useful to me because I had a writing emphasis, so I was like, why do I need to know how to build a set?
And you know, I'm actually grateful that we did take those classes. It just gave me more respect for the people that, for the set, because we do have to work with those people.
Right.
So it gave me more of just a well-rounded view, a perspective of, you know, the people that we're working with. And I think I'm glad that, like, they had to take acting. I was the acting emphasis. And then later I moved on into writing, but we have to take, they have to take acting. The set builders have to take acting classes.
Right.
So it's like we all kind of get to experience what we're all going through. You know?
Well, I liked doing the shows. I liked being, working on lighting. That's where me and Virstyne met. I was in the lighting department. She was in that sound. And so we were working on the same show. But I liked working in the shows and like building the props and stuff. Yeah. But reading the books about wood, I was like, forget it. I don't want to know. Yeah. I don't want to know about what kind of wood it is. So anyway.
Does it build things?
I'm like, I don't know.
Can I put a nail through it?
I just remember it just was mind-numbing, like, chapters, and they couldn't have been drier in the way they talked about things, and so it's just funny how that's what we've come to expect from our education, you know, is that it's just going to be boring, and to dread it, you know, rather than to be excited to learn, when, you know, all three of us enjoy learning. But we know the experience of how dry it is, I mean, and it can be in a traditional setting, so it's very, very interesting. Anyway, so we are going to go take a break, and when we get back, we will have Marcella Piper-Terry with us, talking about her campaign, No Shots, No School, Not True, and you can find her at baxterthoughts.org. We'll be talking to her in just a little bit, but before we want to say goodbye to our good friend Sarah Sotomayor, and thank you once again for coming on and doing the intro. We hope to bring you back soon, talk to you whenever you're available and we have time to bring you in. We'd like to do that. So tell us again about your blog. Where can we find your blog?
It'll be at www.sarahshealingjourney.wordpress.com. And thanks for having me on.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks for coming. Really.
Have a great rest of the day, and we will be in touch with you soon.
Okay.
So we are going to take a short break. We are Truth or Talk. You can find us at www.truthertease.com, and we will be right back.
I was on holiday with Sir Laurence Olivier. We had decided that 9/11 was an intelligence operation. We'd all known about JFK. He had so many mistresses. The CIA shot him. Castro could never have done it. It was clear we had become realists, conspiracy realists. How would we let everyone know was the question. We decided to buy T-shirts that told the contents of our hearts and minds to the world. We went to shop.truthertease.com. Even though the internet hadn't been invented at the time, we went to shop.truthertease.com. There we purchased Conspiracy Realist T-shirts, one of a kind, sold only at shop.truthertease.com. 100% cotton in men's and women's fitted sizes. I won't tell you which one I'm wearing.
It is called Common Core, and the idea behind it is reasonable. States working together to create national standards for education. Standards that are designed to be robust and relevant in the real world. Well, it sounds good. So why is there growing opposition in Ohio and around the country to Common Core? Ben has the reality check you won't see anywhere else.
Well, chances are you may not have heard of Common Core before, and yet Ohio, Kentucky, and Indiana have all adopted the Common Core state standards. Go to the website, and here's what you'll find. Common Core is focused on two things: mathematics standards and English language arts standards. It was created by the National Governors Association Center for Best Practices and the Council of Chief State School Officers. So this isn't some federal unfunded mandate, and all of it sounds good, right? So why is there growing opposition in Ohio and across the nation to Common Core? The group Ohioans Against Common Core say that what the public has been told about this initiative so far is not the truth. For instance, even though the National Governors Association is behind the initiative, it's not actually state-led. The Common Core standards were initiated by private interests in Washington, D.C., not from state lawmakers. The National Governors Association and the Council of Chief State School Officers are both D.C.-based trade associations. In fact, the majority of the creative work was done by a group called Achieve Incorporated. It's a progressive nonprofit group based out of D.C. and received a lot of funding from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Okay, so Common Core wasn't created by the states, but 45 states in the country have adopted it, so it has to be a good thing, right? Well, even though the National Governors Association is cited as the author of Common Core, the feds have had a big hand in it. The Department of Education helped to create Common Core, poured hundreds of millions of dollars into two consortia that are creating national tests aligned with Common Core. And the states that adopted it, well, they did so to remain eligible for Race to the Top federal funding. So with the feds involved, what does Common Core actually mean for states? Well, for starters, Common Core establishment no longer claims that the standards are internationally benchmarked. Their website now states they're informed by the standards of other countries, though there's no definition of informed by. It means streamlined curriculum created not by the states, but by private associations and nonprofits in Washington, D.C. The Fordham Institute, a proponent of Common Core, admits that several states had standards that were superior to CC, and that many states had standards at least as good. Common Core has been described by many as a, quote, race to the middle. Well, what this means for you is that ultimately Common Core means that states will, over time, give up control over curriculum in their schools. States are not allowed to change any of the Common Core standards. Common Core says, well, look, they're not about curriculum, they're only about those standards. And yet, those two testing consortia being funded by the U.S. Department of Education have admitted in their grant applications that, yeah, in fact, they would use the money to develop curriculum models for the nation. And that is Reality Check.
You can find the sources for the story posted on our website, fox19.com. If you'd like to make your voice heard, head over to Ben's Facebook page. It's easy to find it. Just search Ben Swan.
Everything I'm looking at seems crazy. The newspaper, the television, nothing's right. Nothing's telling me what's true. It's like I fell into a bucket of cream and kicked my legs until I became a mouse. What's that about? I'm a conspiracy realist, not a conspiracy theorist. I want a t-shirt that represents me. What? There's one that's available? Go to shop.truthertease.com, says the voice in my head. Shop.truthertease.com. It's not crazy. I'm not afraid to go on the internet and go to shop.truthertease.com. I'm not scared. I've taken out bowling balls that look like you. That's what I said. Straighten out. Get your conspiracy realist t-shirt. Don't make me come over there. You look good. You look good.
So all that's done. Now, we are down to our public comment time. I would like to recognize Mrs. Karen Lamoureux, who has 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Madam Chairman and the board. My name is Karen. I'm a mother of 3 in the Pulaski County Special School District. I am here today not speaking just on behalf of myself. I'm here representing 1,110 other parents, educators, and taxpayers in our state who have some very serious reservations about the Common Core initiative. We are not alone in this regard. 6 other states have pulled out of their park agreement. 22 other states currently have legislation pending to either get out of Common Core or to make significant changes to it. After listening to what was said this morning, I have come to the conclusion that this board is clearly as uninformed as the parents are or were when these standards were adopted. We were told the same thing that you were told, and that Common Core is a set of rigorous, college-ready, internationally benchmarked standards that prepare our kids to compete in a global economy. This is nothing more than an empty sales pitch for corporations and government agencies to profit from our kids and sell them downriver in the name of saving education. I have a math question for you, board members. Are you ready? Get your pencils out. I'm not kidding. Are you smarter than a Common Core fourth grader? Let's find out. The problem is, Mr. Yamada's class has 18 students. If the class counts around by a number and ends with 90, what number did they count by? I'll restate the problem. Mr. Yamada's class has 18 students. If the class counts around by a number and ends with 90, what number did they count by? Does anyone on the board have an answer? 5. And may I ask, madam, how did you come up with that answer?
Divided 18 into 90.
You know why? Because that's what makes sense, right? That's the way we were taught to do it in the fourth grade level. This, however, is what the Common Core standards expect our fourth graders to do. If they solve it in those 2 steps, they get it marked wrong. They are expected to draw 18 circles with 90 hash marks, solving this problem in exactly 108 steps. Board members, this is not rigorous. This is not college ready. This is not preparing our children to compete in a global economy. Skipping rote memorization of multiplication tables is hindering their ability to master long division and fractions later on in the semester. And now our children who were testing in the 80th or higher percentile in math last year are now coming home with C's, D's, and F's on their report cards. Not because, as Arnie Duncan would put it, that white suburban mothers think their children aren't as brilliant as they thought they were, but because, thank you, I encourage you to listen to us when we send you our emails, despite the comments that were made by our chairperson here today. Our concerns are not based on hysteria or propaganda. They are based on fact, and we are prepared to present those facts. Can you see the trembling in my voice? Parents have not had a voice here, and you need to listen to our concerns. We are moving forward with our legislature to make some very serious changes to this, and all I ask is that you bend your ear and take us seriously. We are college-educated parents. I come to you with 12 years of college education and a former member of the National Honor Society when I tell you this is not working, and it's not what they told you it would be. We will save the privacy concerns and the testing concerns for our legislature. But when it comes to standards, that's your ball court, and we need you to help us with this because this program is dumbing our children down. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, welcome back. You're listening to Truth or Talk. I'm April Boden.
And I'm Virstyne Henry.
You can find us at www.truthertees.com and visit our store at shop.truthertees.com, where we have our first T-shirt available for purchase, The Conspiracy Realist. And as we mentioned in the intro, we have a jam-packed show today. We're very excited. I've been wanting to have this person, a friend of mine on Facebook, well, I feel like I know her personally. We've known each other for a while. And she's an awesome lady, Marcella Piper Terry. She is the co-founder of VaxTruth.org. It's a nonprofit website who famously does those billboards all across the country, no shots, no school, not true, educating people on the truth about going to school and the vaccine exemptions, that rights that you have, parental rights to choose your own child's medical decision, make medical decisions for your child. Anyway, Marcella is a great lady. She has a master's of psychology. She's a researcher. She's done private practice before. She's a former Defeat Autism Now, or DAN, practitioner. She's worked as that before. And she's also done neuropsych evaluation. She's worked as a therapist. She's worked with a lot of vaccine-injured children, so she knows a lot. She knows everything about vaccines. One of the most knowledgeable people I've ever met in my entire life about vaccines, vaccine injuries, and also about the law as far as what you can do to get out of having to take vaccines in order to attend school. You should be able to make that decision yourself. So she's an activist, and she's just an awesome lady. So welcome to our show, Marcella Piper Terry. Hi, Marcella.
Hi, April. Thank you for having me.
How are you? You're very welcome. I'm glad to have you. We've known each other for a while on the Facebook, so I feel like I know you.
I feel the same. Yeah.
This is our first time talking, but I feel like I've known you for a while. So, but anyway, so how is everything going today?
Well, things are good here. It's beautiful, and the weather is great, and like 82 degrees for a high today, so that's awesome.
Yeah. And is your daughter back in school already?
Actually, my daughter is 18, and we homeschooled for the last 2 years, and she took her GED and just blew it away, did great on it, and she is preparing to take the ACT and register for college.
Oh, wow. Well, that's awesome. Yeah, our show today is on back to school because obviously a lot of kids are going back to school. My son's going back to school next week, and we wanted to talk about, the campaign that Vax Truth is doing and everything. So,
yeah. So actually, Marcella, I just want to know. My first question is, I want to know more about your personal experience with vaccine damage and how you became involved in the vaccine movement.
Okay.
So could you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, it can be a very long and drawn-out story. I'll try to compress it a little bit.
Okay. No problem.
My daughter was born in 1994 and was fully vaccinated. She got, at the time when she was fully vaccinated as an infant and a young child, there was a lot of thimerosal still left in the vaccines. And I had Rh negative factor, and I got 2 RhoGAM injections during the pregnancy. So she was vaccine compromised from birth. She was very fragile, but she didn't really start getting sick until after her 4 months vaccines. And then she got chronic ear infections, upper respiratory infections, rashes, fevers of unknown origin, seizures, all kinds of these, weird and chronic issues, health issues. I didn't realize until much later on what was going on with her, and I realized that when I did the timeline. I got her medical records, and I looked at all of her illnesses and how her health kind of went in this up and down pattern with peaks and valleys, and her health definitely got worse every time she got vaccinations. She was diagnosed with ADHD combined type and OCD after her kindergarten vaccinations. And then later she was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome and PANDAS, which is pediatric autoimmune neuropsychiatric disorder associated with streptococcus. She really started getting sick when we moved to Indiana. She ended up having chronic hives. She was breaking out in hives every day for about 5 months, and that was the first time that I pulled her out of school and tried to homeschool. When she was 12, she was so sick that I left my practice and devoted the time to being with her and trying to heal her. At that time, she was on multiple pharmaceutical medications daily, in addition to, she was on things for ADHD, and she was on things for asthma and allergies, and she was routinely on antibiotics and steroids. And finally, I just, I'd had enough, and I researched and started applying biomedical interventions before I had ever even heard of DAN, that beat autism now. I started doing a lot of things that the DAN practitioners do with probiotics and fish oil and digestive enzymes and high amounts of B vitamins and antioxidants and all of those things. And as I was seeing things, her health improved, her eye contact improved, she smiled, she laughed, her hives went away, we were able to wean her off of all of the medications that she was on. And as I was, she became kind of my own experiment, my case study. And I started applying a lot of the things that I was doing to the kids I was seeing in the practice where I was working after she got to the point where I was able to go back to work. So that was the lead up to me becoming a DAN provider. I was able to take the DAN training, even though I wasn't licensed in the state, because at that time they were allowing people to do that. They allowed me to do it with a letter of recommendation, and so that's how that went. And then we had decided by that time not to vaccinate her anymore because she just couldn't handle it, and it was the damage was so clear to me by that time. But as is the case with many children who are vaccine injured, their immune systems are shot, and she got bit by a brown recluse spider, and they are very nasty spiders, and they cause necrotization of tissue, and then on top of that she developed MRSA, which is very common for children who are vaccine damaged. And MRSA is a antibiotic-resistant bacterial infection. She got MRSA at the site of the bite, and even though I had been writing and researching about vaccines and knew a lot about vaccines, I had never really looked at tetanus at that point. And I got talked into a tetanus shot, what I thought was a tetanus shot. And that was my first mistake. I went against my gut, and I said, okay, because I was scared. Even though I had refused it twice previously at the hospital, I got talked into it by my family doctor, who knew her history and knew that she couldn't handle the vaccines, or should have known that she should have never gotten a DTaP or a Tdap, and that's what he gave her, was the Tdap. And that was my second mistake. I didn't ask for the manufacturer's insert or the paperwork. He said he was going to give her a tetanus shot. I said yes against my gut, and 3 hours later, she had a grand mal seizure, fell on her head on the computer desk, and stopped breathing and her eyes rolled back in her head while I was holding her head up off the floor. She was 15 at the time, and that was the only vaccine that she got, was the Tdap. And he gave her Adacel, which has 1,500 micrograms of aluminum.
Oh, jeez.
I didn't know any of this at the time. I thought it was just a tetanus shot, and which is bad enough. But it was, I have kicked myself ever since, because I knew to ask, and I didn't. I was scared, and there was this voice in my head that was, what if I'm wrong? What if I'm wrong? So at any rate, I learned a lot about the Tdap since then. I've also learned a lot about how doctors don't report adverse reactions to VAERS, and neither do hospitals. And so when after that time, we took a lot of steps backwards with Rachel. Her health really deteriorated, and she ultimately was diagnosed with primary immune deficiency syndrome, and the prognosis was very, very scary. Basically, the kind of primary immune system deficiency syndrome that she was diagnosed with by the time you have a viral infection that invades the central nervous system, which she had, then it's too late for them to do anything medically. Standard medical treatment says there's nothing we can do, and the children generally die within 30 months of diagnosis. And the cause of death is usually from an antibiotic-resistant bacterial infection, and it's usually MRSA or pneumonia. And she has had 3 bouts with MRSA since then. So that's been very scary. I've been, since then I've been at home. I was building up a biomedical consulting practice at that time, and left that so that I could be home with her, and we just started everything over again. We didn't go back to square one, but we started again with natural, whole foods. We've always had a very clean diet. She's always had a clean diet. She doesn't drink soda. She's a big water drinker. We've always used lots of supplements and whole foods, but we just, kind of doubled what we were doing. Got back on a really strict supplement regimen. Have been juicing and using organics and whole foods, which is kind of difficult because when she started feeling a lot better, then, as like all teenagers are, she's invisible and bulletproof, and she doesn't necessarily see the need to continue doing that. Well, what she has learned since that is when she doesn't stick to the regimen, that's when she gets MRSA. So as long as she sticks to what she's supposed to be doing and takes care of herself, we're doing really well. And she hasn't had a seizure in well over a year. She got her driver's license. She's working. She has a boyfriend. She's just,
It's awesome. Just a regular teen.
Amazingly, completely normal and beautiful, and I'm just thrilled with her.
Wow.
So that's the story of why this is so important to me. You know, and I see these, and that's also the story of why I got involved with the Billboard campaign, because I live outside of Evansville, Indiana, and the Evansville Courier and Press last year published an article on the front page, sticking to the shots, said it's got to have these shots in order to go to school, and gave absolutely no information about exemptions. And it started out with me just calling the editor of the Evansville Courier and Press, the Metro editor, and saying, hey, you probably don't know this, but parents are legally entitled to religious exemptions from vaccination in the state of Indiana. They're also entitled to medical exemptions. And, I think a lot of people, if they knew what's in vaccines, if they knew how they're tested, how they're not tested, if they believe in a higher power, if they believe in God, if they understood, that some of the vaccines are cultured on aborted human fetal tissue, and that, the manipulation of the immune system is so counter to what God's creation is, I think they would might have
the team. If they knew that we really don't need them, that as long as we keep our immune system strong enough that we actually need to fight infections off that we come across. If we have a strong immune system, we don't even need them. Yeah. People don't even know that.
That's how the immune system was developed. I mean, we're supposed. That's why childhood illnesses occur in childhood. It's like if you have a kid who never gets sick, we don't allow them to get sick. We don't allow them. I mean, they are getting sick, but they're getting chronic diseases because their mucosal immune system is being completely bypassed, and we're injecting all this stuff into them. I mean, that makes absolutely no sense. Our bodies were designed to fight off illness through inhalation. When you come in contact with an infectious disease, you don't come in contact unless you're a junkie. You don't come in contact with shooting it into your arm or your butt.
Toxins and bite you on the arm.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you just get it right.
You breathe it in, or you swallow something that goes through your gut, or through dermal contact through the skin. Those are the parts of the body that are supposed to protect us from infectious diseases, and that's where your body responds the way it's supposed to. So when you bypass all of that by injecting all this stuff into the body, it's not even triggering the part of the immune system that is supposed to fight infectious diseases. So instead, we get all of this inflammation and all of these chronic illnesses because the body is so confused about what it's supposed to be doing.
Yeah, and I've heard too. People get injected and then they get the disease anyway. So they get the disease itself. Yeah. Anyway, so it's just like what's the point? Like I was talking about. Like in the first year we did, like I would always get the flu after I got the flu shot. I mean, I don't do flu shots. I don't do any shots anymore, but right. I was like, what's the point,
Right. Exactly, and with the flu shot, I mean, you can use, there's an article on the Vax Truth website. It's actually about meningococcal illness and the fear-mongering that goes on, but in that article, I did an explanation about how the terminal immune system works and the cascading nature of the terminal immune system. It triggers, when part of it is triggered, it results in a domino effect in the immune system. So there are three parts of that immune system, that terminal immune system. There's a part that responds to viruses, there's a part that responds to bacteria, and there's a part that responds to toxins. So if you are injected with, let's just use the flu vaccine. You're injected with a vaccine that contains 3 different viruses, that's what the yearly flu vaccine has, is 3. And it also has toxins in it. Okay, especially if you get it from a multi-dose vial, you're getting, as an adult, you get 25 micrograms of mercury, which is, or thimerosal, 25 micrograms of mercury, which is hundreds of times above the EPA safety limit for mercury. So 2 parts of your immune system have been triggered, the part that's supposed to fight viruses and the part that's supposed to fight toxins. Okay, you got that flu shot and your immune system is trying to fight off viruses and toxins, and you go out and you're exposed to somebody who's got whooping cough, pertussis. Your immune system is already depleted, or you're exposed to somebody who has strep. You know, and because your immune system is already trying to fight off the flu viruses, which, you know, that's a guess anyway, because every year it's based on a prediction of what they think might be going around. And so if you come in contact with another virus that's not a flu virus, you're also more susceptible to get that. That's how people get the flu from getting the flu shot. Unless you get a live virus flu shot, the flu mist, you're not going to get the same flu that's in the flu vaccine. But because they have no clue, it's based on a mathematical prediction of what's going on in China, you know, during the war. The flu vaccine has like a 44% efficacy rate, so flip a coin and you'll do better.
Exactly. So who's to say that you wouldn't just not get sick if you didn't take it at all? You know, like who's to say it's working at all?
That's exactly it. You cannot prove a negative. And that's where it's so frustrating, because they say, well, correlation does not equal causation. Well, okay, but yet you say, because I had this flu vaccine, it's protecting me from the flu, when odds are I wouldn't have gotten it anyway.
Exactly.
And you're telling me correlation does equal causation when it comes to vaccination. You can't have it both ways.
What do you say about those doctors? I mean, they just trip me out. Like, I remember I would get the flu shot, and then I would get the flu, and then I'd go to the doctor, I'd be like, I have the flu. They're like, oh, well, that's you don't really have the flu. It's just, it's not, you're sick, but I'm like, I have a fever, I'm like vomiting.
You have all the flu symptoms.
I have the flu symptoms. But they're like, but you don't really have the flu.
Yeah. Well, for one thing is that if you are vomiting, then technically you don't have, quote unquote, the flu. If you are vomiting, you have a virus that is attacking your intestines, attacks our intestinal system.
But they were just telling me I wasn't sick.
Right. Well, what's telling you is that because you're vomiting, you don't have the flu, because you don't vomit when you get the flu. The flu that they vaccinated you for is an upper respiratory infection kind of flu. You'll get snotty. You'll sneeze a lot. You'll cough a lot. You'll feel crappy. You'll have a fever and all that kind of stuff. The minute you vomit, you don't have the flu. You got another virus. But that's exactly the issue. What happened was you got that flu shot, and it is targeting 3 types of flu that may or may not be going around, because it's based on this prediction. You also got injected with toxins, so your immune system is depressed, trying to figure out how to fight off these toxins that have been injected into you. You go out and you come in contact with somebody who's got a gastrointestinal virus, and you got sick because your immune system is already whacked out from the flu shot you got.
Such a scam, you know?
Vaccines are like a gyp. I feel gypped in
No, yeah, and then last year, Marcella, I was researching, because I don't know if you guys are doing this, the Tdap booster shots. Are they doing this in Indiana?
Yeah.
Making the kids Yeah, well, they started doing that a couple years ago in California, because it's a so-called pertussis outbreak. But when I researched all I did was I looked at the vaccine insert, and as you know, you've read these things, they deliberately, for someone who's a layman like myself, like maybe because you have a background in it sort of makes sense, but they're kind of confusing and they're hard to read and go through. But basically what I got from it was that when they test the efficacy for the pertussis part of it, because as you said before when you're talking about your daughter's reaction, it's actually a 3-in-1. So they changed the booster, the acronym, instead of being the DTaP, they call it the Tdap. But they just changed the order of how they put the letters, right? I mean, it's the same thing, isn't it?
Well, not exactly. It's a different formulation. And the Tdap is given to older adolescents. The DTaP should not be given, and I don't have this in front of me, but I think it's age 7 maybe, where the cutoff is. I'm not exactly sure about that. I'd have to check. But and the reason is because, and this is from the manufacturer's inserts as well, if you look at the manufacturer's inserts and you look at the clinical data, the clinical safety data, there is a very high rate of attrition or dropout in the clinical trials.
Right.
So, and what happens is that they'll start out with a larger number at the first administration, and then when they go back for the second shot, the number is fewer. And then when they go back for the third shot, the number is even fewer than that. And what happened is, and it states this in at least one, probably in others as well, but of the DTaP vaccine manufacturer's inserts is that the severity of reactions, the number of reactions and the severity of reactions increases with additional administrations of the vaccine. So you have children who, I mean, you got to be pretty much a religious person about, vaccines are good. That has to be, almost a religious belief for you in order for you to put your child in a clinical trial for a vaccine when you can get a comparable vaccine for free at the health department. You have to really believe in the importance of doing this if you're going to put your kid in these studies. Unless you live in a third world country where, they don't explain things to you and basically it's, a violation of the Nuremberg Code. So, but at any rate, these children are, they're dropping out of the studies like flies. So, and the reason is because with each administration, it's the pertussis component that is so problematic and so dangerous. And this is why they changed from the DPT vaccine in the first place. When it has that little A in it, it's capital D, capital P, or Tdap, capital D, capital T, small a, and then capital P. And it's that A is acellular. And what that means is that they changed it from the DPT, which was a whole cell pertussis vaccine, but that was causing too many deaths from SIDS in children after their 2 month and 4 month shots. So, and the lawsuits were so frequent that the vaccine manufacturer said, either the government's going to protect us or we're going to get out of the business of making vaccines. This is in the 1980s, and it was because of the whole cell pertussis vaccine that the vaccine manufacturers are now protected by the U.S. government from liability because they threatened to quit making vaccines altogether if they weren't protected. So as a result of that, you can't sue if something happens to your kid. Well, so what they did was when they were testing the DTaP vaccine, and you can look at the manufacturer's inserts for this, in the clinical trials, what they did was they went through, for the safety data, quote unquote, they looked at the number of and severity of adverse reactions in kids who were enrolled in the experimental group, which got the DTaP vaccine, and the control group. And guess what the control group got? The DPT vaccine.
Right.
They didn't get that's not a control group. There's no...
Right, they get a different... Right, they didn't get the exact same vaccine.
Well,
yeah.
If you have a control group, by definition, is supposed to get something that has no physiological effect on the body. This is something that is done routinely in vaccine trials, is instead of giving a true placebo, they will use another vaccine as a control, and then they'll compare adverse reactions between one group and another. Or they'll use the adjuvant, which is aluminum in most cases. And aluminum is put in vaccines in the first place because it stimulates the immune system. So they can make cheaper vaccines because they have to use a smaller amount of the virus that in order to stimulate, or bacteria, in order to stimulate a response. So it's put in there to ramp up the immune system. By definition, if it ramps up the immune system, it can't be a placebo. So what they do is they check, this is their control group that's getting either another vaccine or the adjuvant, and then they compare the adverse reactions from the quote-unquote control group to the experimental group, and they say, well, there's no difference between the number of people who died or the number of people who had severe adverse reactions. Therefore, we can conclude that the vaccine from the experimental group is safe because it's no worse than the quote-unquote placebo in the control group. That's crap. There's no placebo.
Well, yeah, it's the biggest scam there ever was. It really is. Once you start looking at it, and like you're saying, it's just right in there in the vaccine insert. You can see that it's not even a true control study.
Right. With the HPV vaccines,
right.
They had 7 clinical trials before the vaccine went to market. And in 5 of those clinical trials, they used the adjuvant as the placebo.
Yeah.
And they did the same thing with the meningococcal vaccine, Menimune. They compared the Menimune to another meningococcal vaccine. and you use that as placebo. There is no, when you do it that way, there is zero safety data on these vaccines.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Or efficacy, because it's not the same thing.
Right.
So you can't even tell if it works. And, you know, as we know, I mean, like you were saying, you don't get the exact same flu, but you still get sick. So what's the point?
and with the pertussis vaccine, and I really want to get this out there, because with the pertussis vaccine, pertussis is a bacterial infection. The reason that we're having all of these outbreaks now of pertussis is because the strain that is causing the outbreaks is parapertussis, and parapertussis is not covered in the vaccine. The vaccine was developed years ago, and it has done what other vaccines have done when they try to wipe out a bacterial disease or bacterial illness, and they don't cover all the strains. The easiest way to think about this is with Prevnar vaccine, which is a pneumococcal vaccine. They started out with the first two variants of the Prevnar vaccine, the pneumococcal vaccine, had 7 strains of Streptococcus and 13 strains of Streptococcus. And the reason that we now have 23 strains of Streptococcus in the pneumococcal vaccine is because when you have a partial coverage vaccine and you don't cover all the bacteria, all the strains, then the ones that are not covered become more virulent. They become more problematic, and they start causing illness when they might not have in the past. Bacteria mutate in response to a threat. And if you think about if you've ever taken an antibiotic and the doctor tells you got to take this exactly as it's directed, don't stop taking it before it's all gone, because if you do, it's not going to work, because the bacteria will mutate and it will no longer be effective. And this is not just about bacteria, this is about viruses. This is why viruses do the same thing. This is a big concern with the HPV virus, or HPV vaccine, because Gardasil only covers 4 strains of HPV virus, of human papillomavirus, and there are more than 100 strains. And many of those are associated with cervical cancer. So when you only cover 4 of those strains, the ones that aren't covered are going to become more virulent, and they're going to start causing cervical cancer and anal cancer and throat cancers when they didn't before. So when you get to this point, you've got this, okay, let's go back to the antibiotic analogy. The doctor tells you to take an antibiotic exactly as directed because the bacteria will mutate, and then the antibiotic won't work. And that happens over the course of a 7 to 10 day antibiotic administration. So how in the world are we supposed to believe that a vaccine that was developed to fight bacterial infection years ago is still effective? Because it takes years to go through research and development and to go through FDA approval, clinical trials, and all of that before it ever gets to the point where it's ever being injected in the doctor's office or the health department. So if bacteria change over the course of a 7 to 10 day antibiotic administration, why would we think that they would stay the same and still be, and that a vaccine that was developed, years and years ago, even months ago, would still be effective against bacterial infections? It's not. It's not working. And the only thing it is doing is causing increased illness, because the more people get vaccinated with it, the more parapertussis is becoming problematic. So you got the same situation. You get people who are living in a place, somebody gets a whooping cough, there's a whooping cough outbreak, quote unquote. People get scared, they run out and they get the DTaP or the Tdap, which does nothing against parapertussis. Their immune systems are then compromised. They go home and they cocoon and snuggle their little babies. And in the meantime, they're exposing themselves to parapertussis when they're going into the doctor's office, because they're running into people who are coughing and who are sick. They go home and they spread that to their child.
Wow. What is your knowledge of the HPV vaccine and how they say it relates to cervical cancer?
Well, human papillomavirus is associated with cervical cancer, and cervical cancer is not a huge problem in the United States. It has not been a huge problem in the United States, and we are way over vaccinating. We're trying to, again, I don't have the data in front of me, but I believe, if I'm if I'm remembering correctly, that prior to the institution of the HPV vaccine, there were approximately 1,000 deaths per year in the United States from cervical cancer. Cervical cancer is a very slow-growing cancer, and it takes generally it takes decades to develop. So, and the thing about HPV is that approximately 80% of the population will contract HPV over the course of their lifetime if they are sexually active. It's very, very common. They are not testing, and to my knowledge, they've not looked at the fact that, that we don't know. Can mothers pass it to their children? If 80% of the population is infected with HPV over the course of their lifetime, are mothers passing it on to their children? Are we vaccinating children to prevent an infection that they may already be carrying, and is that part of the reason why their bodies are reacting the way they are, and we now have more than 100 deaths from this vaccine, and it's only been licensed for 6 years?
Wow. No, it's really bad. It's really high. We have a frequent guest that we have on, Sarah Sotomayor. She was just on before you, and she had a very severe reaction. She's now 19. She had it when she was 13, and so she's still struggling health-wise. She's not able to walk. She's done a lot to try and heal herself naturally, but, I mean, she gets a flu and she can't walk anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how bad it's.
The reactions to the HPV vaccine are horrendous. It's, there are a lot of people who are saying it's the worst vaccine that's ever been developed, and, I guess I do have to agree with that, although I haven't looked at it in comparison with DPT. I don't know. I mean, there are a lot of infant deaths that I believe, and a lot of researchers have presented some compelling evidence. There are a lot of infant deaths, particularly from SIDS and shaken baby syndrome, what's been diagnosed or proclaimed to be shaken baby syndrome, that occur within a matter of hours and days after a child gets their 4-month vaccinations. So I think that it's very difficult because of the way that VAERS is set up, and because of the way that data is collected or is not collected and not reported. It's very difficult to say which vaccine is the worst ever, but certainly those two are up there.
Yeah, and certainly in our community, the autism community, which, as you guys both know, my son is diagnosed with autism after he received the MMR vaccine. So we're definitely seeing a lot of regression into autism after the measles, mumps, rubella, the MMR. And it's very common. It's usually either the Tdap or the MMR that I'm hearing the most.
My cousin is autistic. She regressed after the MMR.
Yeah. And the problem is a lot of people, I'm going to have to go in just a second here, but
sure.
The problem with that is that a lot of people think that it is, quote, the MMR, because up until that point, they've gotten hepatitis B vaccines. They've gotten the Tdap or the DTaP vaccines. They've gotten the hepatitis A and the polio and the rotavirus and the pneumococcal and all of these things. They've gotten all of these vaccines up until that point. When they get the MMR, that's the thing that's different. But they're still getting all of these other things. So even though, like, for example, the MMR doesn't contain mercury and it never has, it's given at the same time with vaccines that do contain mercury and that contain aluminum, and the synergistic effects of all of those vaccines simultaneously has never been studied for safety or efficacy. So, and there are other issues along with the MMR and with the live virus vaccines. That there's a study that was put out by COG for Life not too long ago about the homologous expression of recombinant DNA in autism, X-linked autism chromosomes. And it is just mind-blowing what they're seeing. And when you think about it, it makes perfect sense. We're injecting children with the DNA of other human beings. How in the world would we be surprised that they are having these huge autoimmune reactions? Because that's what autism is. It's an autoimmune reaction that attacks the neurological system and the immune system.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, wow. Well, I know you have to go right now, so we're going to go ahead and say goodbye to you, and I'll get the website again and talk about that a little bit more as you after you go off, so that you can. I know you have to go pick up your daughter. So, but thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm really glad to be with you today.
Yes, I'm so glad. It's been overdue. I've been wanting to have you on for a while. So, great. Thank you so much, and we will try to get you on again really, really soon. The site is vaxtruth.org. Please go there and give a donation. We want to get these billboards made all across the country that say no shots, no school, not true.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you,
In 5 minutes, I hope to provide insightful comments about a variety of educational topics. I sincerely hope you disprove the research I've compiled. Here's the history of the Common Core. In 2009, the National Governors Association and the Council of Chief State School Officers partnered with Achieve, Inc., a nonprofit that received millions of funding from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Thus, the initiative seemed to spring from states when in reality it was contrived by an insular group of educational testing executives with only 2 academic content specialists. Neither specialist approved the final standards, and the English consultant Dr. Sandra Stotsky publicly stated she felt the standards left students with an empty skill set lacking literary knowledge. While educators and administrators were later included in the validation committee and feedback groups, they did not play a role in the actual drafting of the standards. The product is a, quote, rigorous preparation for career and college, yet many educators agree that rigorous is a buzzword. These standards aren't rigorous, just different, designed for an industrial model of school. Nevertheless, Common Core emerged. Keep in mind the specific standards were never voted upon by Congress, the Department of Education, state or local governments, yet their implementation was approved by 49 states and territories. The president essentially bribed states into implementation via Race to the Top, offering $4.35 billion taxpayer dollars to participating states, $500 million of which went to Tennessee. And much like No Child Left Behind, the program promises national testing and a one-size-fits-all education because, hey, it worked really well the first time. While I do admire some aspects of the core, such as fewer standards and an emphasis on application and writing, it's not going to fix our academic deficit. If nothing else, these standards are a glowing conflict of interest, and they lack the research they allegedly received. And most importantly, the standards illustrate a mistrust of teachers, something I believe this county has already felt for a while. I've been fortunate to have incredible educators that open my eyes to the joy of learning, and I love them like my family. I respect them entirely, which is why it frustrates me to review the team and Apex evaluation systems. These subjective anxiety producers do more to damage a teacher's self-esteem than you realize. Erroneous evaluation coupled with strategic compensation presents a punitive model that, as a student, is like watching your teacher jump through flaming hoops to earn a score. Have you forgot the nature of a classroom? A teacher cannot be evaluated without his students. Excuse me, because as a craft, teaching is an interaction. Thus, how can you expect to gauge a teacher's success with no control for students' participation or interest? I stand before you because I care about education, but also because I want to support my teachers. And just as they fought for my academic achievement, so I want to fight for their ability to teach. This relationship is at the heart of instruction, yet there will never be a system by which it is accurately measured. But I want to take a step back. We can argue the details ad infinitum, yet I observe a much broader issue with education today. Standards-based education is ruining the way we teach and learn. Yes, I've already been told by legislators and administrators, Ethan, that's just the way things work. But why? I'm going to answer that question. It's bureaucratic convenience. It works with nuclear reactors. It works with business models. Why can't it work with students? I mean, how convenient calculating exactly who knows what and who needs what. I mean, why don't we just manufacture robots instead of students? They last longer and they always do what they're told. But education is unlike every other bureaucratic institute in our government. The task of teaching is never quantifiable. If everything I learn in high school is a measurable objective, I haven't learned anything. I'd like to repeat that. If everything I learn in high school is a measurable objective, I have not learned anything. Creativity, appreciation, inquisitiveness, these are impossible to scale, but they're the purpose of education. Why our teachers teach, why I choose to learn. And today we find ourselves in a nation that produces workers. Everything is career and college preparation. Somewhere our founding fathers are turning in their graves, pleading, screaming, and trying to say to us that we teach to free minds. We teach to inspire. We teach to equip. The careers will come naturally. I know we're just one city in a huge system that excitedly embraces numbers. But ask any of these teachers, ask any of my peers, and ask yourselves, haven't we gone too far with data? I attended tonight's meetings to share my critiques, but as Benjamin Franklin quipped, any fool can criticize, condemn, and complain, and most fools do. The problems I cite are very real, and I ask only that you hear them out, investigate them, and do not dismiss them as another fool's criticisms. I'll close with a quote of Jane L. Stanford that Dr. McIntyre shared in a recent speech. You have my entire confidence in your ability to do conscientious work to the very best advantage to the students, that they be considered paramount to all and everything else. We're capable of fixing education, and I commit myself to that task. But you cannot ignore me, my teachers, or the truth. We need change, but not Common Core, high-stakes evaluations, or more robots. Thank you.
Cinder block walls. We are all expected to be the same. We are trained to ace every standardized test, and those who deviate and see light through a different lens are worthless to the scheme of public education, and therefore viewed with contempt. H.L. Mencken wrote in the American Mercury for April 1924 that the aim of public education is not to fill the young of the species with knowledge and awaken their intelligence. Nothing could be further from the truth. The aim is simply to reduce as many individuals as possible to the same safe level, to breed and train a standardized citizenry, to put down dissent and originality. That is the aim in the United States. To illustrate this idea, doesn't it perturb you to learn about the idea of critical thinking? Is there really such a thing as uncritically thinking? To think is to process information in order to form an opinion. But if we are not critical when processing this information, are we really thinking? Or are we mindlessly accepting other opinions as truth?
Hello, thanks for having me on your radio. Even though we're not from a famous rock and roll band, if we were, even though we sound a little like we are, we definitely wear a Conspiracy Realist t-shirt, because they're gear, aren't they? Oh yeah, they're really gear. I want to write a song about them. Conspiracy Realist t-shirts at truthatease.com. I gotta think of the middle eight. Shop.truthatease.com. What does that mean? It's the internet. What's that? I don't know. It's a net. It's between things. Shop.truthatease.com. What's that? It's where you get Conspiracy Realist t-shirts. Oh.
Welcome back to Truth or Talk. I'm Virstyne Henry. And I'm April Boden. All right, so let's welcome our next guest. I'm very excited. Her name is Erica Goldson. Erica Goldson was a recent speaker at the TEDx Belo Horizonte talking about ways to improve education. She also has a blog, americaviaerica.blogspot.com, which she began writing after a YouTube video of her valedictory speech during her high school graduation ceremony in 2010, which went viral. Please welcome to the show, Erica Goldson. Hi, Erica. How are you?
Erica. Hi, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for being on the show. We appreciate you coming on. We were so impressed, as so many people were, as Virstyne mentioned in your intro. The YouTube video went viral. What did you think about that? Did you expect that to happen?
No, not at all. I guess I did know that I wanted my speech to be something big, but I didn't think that it would become a sensation on the internet so quickly, and if ever, and it just happened. I guess someone had recommended to me that I should start a blog and put the speech on the blog, so that's what I did, and I put some keywords, and then all of a sudden, a week later, I checked my Facebook, and I have friends from places I've never heard of, and speech, and then someone said, oh, go put a video on YouTube of it. Do you have a video of it? Because that'll reach more people. I said, well, yeah, I guess I could do that. My little brother filmed it, so, and then, oh my gosh, then it just exploded. So I didn't expect it, but I'm glad it happened.
Yeah, I'm sure it's changed some things about your life, I imagine.
Oh, definitely. A lot of opportunities.
Yeah. Wow. And we're doing a back-to-school special today. That's why we wanted to have you on, because we wanted to talk about the education system in general. And you talk in your speech about the type of student you were, because you were the valedictorian, so obviously you were a really good student. So tell us a little bit about your experience in the public school system, and what kind of student were you?
Well, I guess I was a student that like I said, I just always did what I was told, and I thought it was easy enough to just know what the teacher wanted and give the teacher what they wanted. And I always made sure I got all my homework and all my assignments done before I would go out and party. But I felt like I was living a double life. I would live like the A+ student in school, but then outside of school, I would go and experiment with certain things that, none of my teachers knew about. And it opened my eyes when I would be hanging out with people from all different walks of life. Even if they were just in my high school, there were people with different viewpoints and people who didn't have the same type of work ethic, I guess you could call it, and that's the same type of work ethic in school as I did, and they understood schooling in a different way than I did. And I guess one of the biggest moments was before I was about to graduate, when I was talking to a foreign exchange student from Germany, and he made me feel really stupid because he said how our school was teaching sciences that he had learned in 6th grade, and he was at the 10th or 11th grade level in our school. And I just couldn't believe it, and it really opened my eyes. And I guess that's why I even wrote the speech. I was just feeling really stupid.
Aw, you're not stupid. Obviously not, but that's an interesting perspective. Yeah, but you know what, though? It's really cool that you have, I don't know what you call it, lack of ego or whatever, just to admit that you don't know everything. That's what makes... Actually, to me, I think that's what really real smart people admit that they don't know everything. Mm-hmm. And there's people that, you look up to, and they, maybe they have good grades and stuff, but they're very close to a lot of new information, because they don't want to look stupid, or they don't want to admit that they don't know anything,
Yeah, and you said a lot of really interesting things in your speech, because what prompted you was this foreign exchange student, and you felt really stupid. But some of the things you said in your speech, you were talking about kind of the system as mind control or sort of indoctrination. And so how did you figure all that out? Where did you come up with all that? When did you sort of awaken to that was what was going on?
I don't know. I guess I could just say writing this speech was the awakening experience, because at first I was trying to write something positive. I had no idea what I was going to write, and I was just trying to write something really great and something positive. And I realized that I was faking it. I didn't feel like what I was writing was real. And so then I just started writing from the heart and from what I really felt and how I felt like a slave. And that's probably one of my favorite parts of the speech, because it was so true of how I was feeling. And it just went on from there. I started reading essays from John Taylor Gatto and H.L. Mencken and other minds, and I got that incorporated into my speech and realized other people saw the world this way, and that made me feel like maybe I was onto something.
Yeah, well, you definitely were onto something for sure from what I've come to understand about the public school system. And so what do you think about that, as far as, like, why do you suppose the system is sort of messed up in the way that you described, sort of that it's just, what you talked about was basically you were a really good student because you were good at doing what you were told, as opposed to the critical thinking. And one of the things in your TED speech that you gave, you talked about how there are other ways to teach. There are other methods. You brought up an example of a homeschooling mother who taught her child math in a different way than what you would be taught in school. So why do you suppose the school system is how it is?
Well, I know that there's a lot of history behind it, and of course how it came, I think, from the Prussian system of schooling. And really, I guess, though, there are people that are working in this system without knowing the history behind it, and the reason why it's perpetuated is because they fall into a box of comfort. And like people like me, if they're constantly told, oh, you're great, you're doing great, and they're constantly validated with an A, then their mind just thinks it's the right thing, and they just keep going and going and going until maybe one day they decide to reflect seriously and honestly and realize that they're not fulfilled. But by that time, it just seems that a lot of people that I've talked to, they're already so involved in the system, and they have debts to pay, and they need to keep doing it. And there's all these other factors, like a teacher, for example, who is teaching based on what higher authorities are telling them to. But they didn't know that when they were going to college for education. They didn't really see behind the curtain when they were going through school, and all they knew was that they really liked English, they really liked reading, and they wanted to share this with people. But then by the time that they're actually involved in the career and everyone's telling them what to do, they realize it's a different story there.
Well, do you think also people just don't want to admit that they've been bamboozled? You know?
Yeah, I think so.
Not like the comfortability, but just admitting that, you know, the ego thing.
Yeah, because a lot of people define themselves by their education, by what they've learned, and if they have to get rid of that and admit that it's all wrong, then it's a scary place to be. It's like, what do I have now if that's all wrong?
Yeah. And some of them have to ask for a refund because they got chipped.
Right, some people pay a lot of money.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's interesting, and I have friends that have gone to Ivy League colleges, but even most of them, they actually kind of went off and discovered things for themselves. You know, they're smart people. Like, I have a friend that went to Columbia, Yale, Oxford, Stanford. One of my friends went to Stanford, and she dropped out. because she just was like, I can't, she was unhappy. She didn't feel free. She felt like, you know.
Yeah, and you know, I bet there are a lot of private institutions that help people think critically, and I haven't been to one. I haven't been to an Ivy League college, but I was just talking to someone today, actually, who is at Princeton and was saying that he's met a lot of people who are critically minded like him and like myself, but it seems that the majority of students just go into institutions that they can afford, like public institutions, and they maybe go for something that they aren't really passionate about, but they just think this might be the right path for me, and then it doesn't turn out to be. For example, my older brother went to get a degree in business, and now he realizes, you know what I'd really like to do? I'd really like to be an engineer, but by this time he's almost done with his college degree. So now he has to think about going for something else, and maybe we're just so pressured we're just pressured by outside forces to just go and choose something before we're actually ready.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, before we've had enough time to discover who we are. Yeah. And then, so how are you supposed to, when you're very young, discover what you want to be for the rest of your life?
Especially when everyone else is telling you the whole time in school what you are, and you never have that breather.
Yeah, and I think if people didn't tell people what to do, or children what to do, what they should be, then they would be able to kind of come to a self-conclusion or a conclusion about what they are sooner, probably in life. Mm-hmm. You know, they would have that space to just kind of like, I wonder, I mean, I'm curious about Montessori method in schools like that, and if there's a higher rate of students kind of like figure out what they want to do and, you know,
the Montessori system?
Yeah.
Are you familiar with that, Erica?
Yeah, it's funny. I have a book on my nightstand right now about the Montessori education that I had received about 2 years ago, and I just dug it out. And I had only read a chapter, and now I'm forcing myself to read the rest, because I do think it's important to understand these other forms of education. I already have been really interested in unschooling, but sometimes people need like a little bit of structure, and Montessori is definitely something that offers that with hands-on learning.
Yeah, there's definitely one approach that I'm not too familiar with, but I understand that it sort of works on. It's for smaller children. I think it's in Italian, the Emilia Regius. Are you familiar with that? It just works with smaller children, like preschool and kindergarten age, and basically it's based on allowing them to explore and then teaching them based on their interest.
Okay.
So it's sort of more working on towards that. So what do you think about, like, what do you tell parents? I imagine people come up to you and say things like, well, what am I supposed to do? My kid's in school, and should I homeschool them, or things like that? So what's your opinion on that as far as, is the system just a waste of time? Is it totally broken and everybody should just be homeschooling their kids? Or do you think that there's hope to kind of reform it?
Well, I suppose if I was in that situation, first I would just ask my child if they liked school and if they were enjoying it and if they wanted to take a break from it. And if I had a child and asked if my child wanted to take a break from school, I'm 99% sure that child would say yes. I don't really know. There are some people that say they really like school for varying reasons. But if they did want to take a break, imagine what other opportunities you could offer them, and you could start, bringing them to new places and trying out new schools.
Right. And then, so what do you think about the public school system as far as, like, I know they use a lot of sort of behavioral therapy techniques, like B.F. Skinner kind of things, as far as teaching kids obedience and how to be orderly and things like that. What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, well, obviously there are many kids that don't belong there, that sitting in a desk isn't right for them, and then they have to pump them with Ritalin or whatever to make them sit still. And those are the people that are the most creative oftentimes, and we should be looking at their strengths rather than their weaknesses and trying to make them fit a certain mold. All I can say is if it's clear that your child isn't fitting into this kind of structure, then they need something else. If there are people saying that this child is constantly misbehaving, it's not because the child is a bad child. It's just because it's not the right setting for that child. It's not the right environment.
Are you familiar with Charlotte Iserbyt's work?
Yeah. Dumbing down of American education, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Very interesting. I was going to suggest, if you didn't, maybe something.
Right. Do you have an opinion about her, or about what she's written about her?
Well, I agree that we are dumbing down people. It's weird because, I can't say that every child that goes through the system is becoming just a robot that will never amount to anything and will just keep following the system, because clearly that didn't happen to me, and maybe it was a good thing that I was able to experience this to then understand it in a new light. But there's definitely
like a slowing.
What?
A slowing of dumbing down.
It's like a slower. You have to take more time to come to a realization that you can come to when you're younger. Like, sometimes I think that maybe grammar school is a good thing to learn the basics, to learn reading and writing and math. And then after you can actually learn the basics, then you can be free to be creative with those basics. And then you can understand more about how the world works and how you can come to explore that world, and through writing or through math and creating things. And then it seems that once you reach middle school and high school age, maybe you just get bored with it because it's just not the right way anymore for them to be telling you how exactly to do something. You want more freedom, you want more creativity and more space to do that.
So you're familiar with Howard Gardner's work?
No, I'm not Howard Gardner.
Oh, you should look this up. His name is Howard Gardner, and the theory of multiple intelligences.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and he talks about like how basically people have different ways of interpreting the world, and through like their intelligences, there's like spatial, which is like artists, right? Designers. There's like math. There's music. There's interpersonal, which is like yourself. There's interpersonal, which is being able to communicate to other people. There's what's the other one? I'm trying to think. There's interpersonal, math, music. Who's looking up? Right? There's naturalist, linguistic. I think it seems like I'm missing one more. Because there were 7 and then they added an 8. And the 8th one was naturalist. They added an eighth one. But anyway, I think you find that interesting. And yeah.
So he talks about multiple intelligences as in we all have certain natural abilities that specialize are?
Yeah, exactly. And maybe and through that's how we interpret the world. And then once you find out what those abilities are, you can then teach people through those abilities. Oh, kinesthetic, that was the other one.
Okay.
So some people learn better by moving, right? Some people learn better musically, like audio listening. Some people learn better visually. Some people, learn better by like drawing it or,
Yeah, that sounds really interesting. And I'd also be interested in knowing why that is, why we are just naturally different, because it does seem that way to me. Of course, that's probably a big question. But to at least know how to teach someone based on their natural abilities is something very valuable in the education system, and we're clearly only teaching it one certain way right now, and that's a little devastating because people aren't coming to critical conclusions about what they're being taught.
Yeah, and just imagine how empowered we would be as a society if people were really smart and thought critically, and what we can accomplish as a human race. If we were really taught on that level. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'd probably be on Mars already, or whatever. Right. We'd probably be like driving
on Mars.
Yeah, or whatever we need to do as a society. Like I love. You said something too that you weren't. You said. It's not that I'm more intelligent than my peers, but only the best at doing what I am told. And I think that most people are smart. I'm nice. Maybe my friends tease me that I have too much faith in humanity, but I don't think people are as stupid as they're made out to be. Mm-hmm. It's just other factors of being taught a certain way or being passionate about. People that I noticed too are considered quote unquote geniuses. They're usually passionate about what they do. Right. Putting all their focus into what they're interested in.
Right. And it's only one specific subject rather than the 8 that we have to learn throughout the day.
Yeah. So it's like maybe you're a genius in one thing, but you're not. You're totally not a genius in something else.
Yeah, or maybe it leads you to be interested in other things based on that one thing. So, you learn writing so you can express your view on physics. But, they need to come to that conclusion on their own that they need to learn how to write well. Or they just start, reading physics and then they learn on their own. It just happens. Because if you're interested in something, you want to do it as well as you possibly can.
Definitely, exactly. It's a shame. I hope we get to that point.
And so is this blog that you're writing, is this your sort of foray into writing? It's really good. I like that. I enjoyed reading it. You're an interesting writer. So is this the first time that you started writing?
Well, I guess so, because I had never really done a lot of writing outside of what I was assigned in school. Maybe some poetry here and there to express some anxious feelings or whatnot, but I never really wrote about my experiences. I kept a diary when I was little, but I stopped that. And then I started this blog once I started traveling because I did want to document my experiences, but I did decide to just continue it about a year ago, I suppose, because I realized I like writing about my life, but I don't like sharing it with so many people because what turns out is that I'm writing about negative experiences that I'm having or perceived negative experiences, and it's hard to write about them and including other people and knowing that other people would see that, and it's just a little political conflict inside of me. But I do keep a personal blog now where I can write about my experiences, and it feels a lot better because I don't have to edit it out. I can be free with my thoughts, and if it does amount to something that I do want to share, then I can always post that in various places.
Well, that's cool. I'm just curious if you received any kind of animosity. I guess that's the word I'm looking for. As a result of you, have people been malicious or mean to you after your speech?
Yeah, well, I did receive animosity. I think that's a good word for it, because even just people in my town. First of all, a lot of the students, a lot of my peers, for some reason, thought that I was calling them stupid. They got that out of my speech somehow, and then I think maybe parents of my peers also thought that I wasn't being appreciative enough of what I have, because there are people that don't have access to any type of education, and I didn't want to be perceived that way, but I wanted to motivate us to just make it better. But people did focus on the negative of what I was saying. And also I've received a few emails. I think I also read a blog post about someone's perspective, and mostly they were commenting about how I was being selfish on my outlook when I was writing my speech, and I was only writing from my own perspective, and he had a completely different perspective. And when I said, well, this is great, I'm glad to see what you think, and I think it's important that we all learn how to do that. We all learn how to see other people's views and not get angry about it and not be closed-minded and scared.
Yes, very true. Very true. Very interesting. Well, you're it's still really brave of you, like I said, to be able to do that, because a lot of people won't be as outspoken for fear that they would have people attack them like that.
Right. It's very honest speech.
Yeah.
I mean, I think probably more people related to it than not, I would say. I'm sure anytime you say things honestly, there's always going to be somebody who is offended, or they take it personal. They take it personal. They think it's about them. When it's really not. It's just, you were speaking generally about yourself and about the system, and I thought it was very smart and very brave, but because you were speaking, it's funny how other people got offended that you were calling them dumb, because you were actually sort of critical of yourself, saying that you had just become kind of obedient and learned how to do this and you were sort of putting yourself at the level saying, I don't feel that I'm more intelligent than my peers. I just was better at taking orders. And so that was really brave and really smart. So what other projects do you have coming up? I know you had the TED speech. Are you going to be doing any more public speaking, or?
No, I don't have anything planned right now. I'm just living a pretty calm lifestyle. I've come back to the United States, and I'm living with my mom again, and just planning on working a lot because I ran out of money. And
that sounds like me.
Yeah, I guess it's, I hope this doesn't continuously happen throughout my life. I'm trying to become independent, so what my plan is to buy a motorhome of some sort so I can travel more freely without having to rely on finding hotels or hostels and whatnot. And I also have just developed a more entrepreneurial mindset. So I have a face painting business. I'm also writing online, and I am interested in studying circus performing arts, believe it or not, something that I would have never pictured when I was in school.
Which branch, like the trapeze artist? Or
What do you think? To do aerial dancing from the silks, the long silk ropes that you kind of spin yourself around and yoga for.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's very cool. So good.
Good for you.
Yeah, just following your bliss.
Like
following your heart.
Your awesome life, man. People in college would lie at the desk with a pencil.
Exactly.
You're doing aerial arts and traveling in your motor.
Aerial dance, I know. That's really great.
Yeah, but I feel I can still balance it too, because I know I do have an intellectual side, and I do want to be a reader and a writer, but I have the internet for that, and I realized how much of a gift it is because I was actually, when I was living in Guatemala, I didn't have immediate access to it, and now I do, and I love it so much. I love how I can just go on Wikipedia and click links endlessly to learn whatever I want. So,
yeah. Well, that's great. So we are just about out of time, but before we go, we want to close this our back-to-school episode here with just asking you, what would you tell our audiences as kids are going back to school, and what would you tell parents to kind of look for to see to make sure that their children are sort of successful?
Oh, well, I love that you just said the word successful, because my view of success is personal. So basically, as long as your child thinks that he or she is successful, then the parent has nothing to worry about. Oftentimes, even as parents, we are to blame for putting all these expectations on our children, and we want them to be like mini us, I suppose. I mean, I'm not a parent, but this is what I've seen. And I suppose we just have to let them walk their own path, and when they have questions for us, we can certainly answer them and give them our guidance. And if we don't know anything, we have to be sure to let them know we don't know it, but it's great that they're asking that question, and I'm sure that they could learn it on themselves, and we'd be interested in finding out the answer, and always inspiring that in them to be questioning. I think that's the most important part.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, always be questioning and just kind of, as you said in your speech, critically thinking and questioning what they're being taught, questioning, and as Virstyne, you brought up the different types of intelligence, and Erica, you said something about, the kids that are sort of restless and then they just get the riddle. And, don't you ever wonder if these kids that are just so restless, if their intelligence isn't kinesthetic, if they're just, they need to move and that's how they learn. So, and then we just have this one way, and since they're getting up out of their chair, well, let's put them back in their chair, make sure that they go.
Yeah,
So,
usually those kids, too, are really, really smart. They're really creative. For my
right.
teacher.
Yeah, exactly.
It's frustrating for me to try and, control a classroom with those type of students because I have to think about everybody and trying to get everybody to sit down and listen.
Right.
And do and teach the way that I've been taught to teach. But at the same time, once you get to know these kids, they're really brilliant, really funny, really interesting. Actually, they're kind of like my favorite kids. I have a love-hate relationship with them because I'm stressed out, but at the same time, they're wonderful people, wonderful personalities, and I learn a lot from them.
So you said you discontinued you stopped writing in the blog. So how do people find out if they want to keep up with what you're doing? Are you doing anything else where people can find you?
Well, I really do appreciate personal emails. So if anyone wants to talk to me and just share opinions or experiences, I love getting to know people. So my email is ericagoldson@gmail.com, and anyone's more than welcome to send something to me.
Okay, so is it ERICA?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
GOLDSON?
Yes.
@gmail.com.
Yes.
All right.
All right. Well, fantastic. Thank you so much, Erica. It's been a pleasure meeting you and talking to you on our show. And
definitely,
we wish you the best of luck. It sounds like you're having a very interesting, very exciting life, which is very encouraging. And I hope other kids kind of listen to this and follow suit with that, follow their bliss, and it'd be a different kind of world we'd live in if they did. So thank you so much. And we're going to take a break, and we'll come right back to do a quick extra for the show. We'll close the show out. So we'll be back in a few seconds and close out the show. All right. Thanks again, Erica.
Bye, Erica.
Hello. Thanks for having me on your radio. Even though we're not from a famous rock and roll band, if we were, even though we sound a little like we are, we'd definitely wear a Conspiracy Realist t-shirt, because they're gear, aren't they? Oh yeah, they're really gear. I want to write a song about them. Conspiracy Realist t-shirt at truthandtees.com. I gotta think of the little A. Shop.truthandtees.com. What does that mean? It's the internet. What's that? I don't know. It's a net. It's between things. Shop.truthandtees.com. What's that? So you get Conspiracy Realist t-shirt. Oh, yeah.
Okay, welcome back.
Welcome back. We are Truth or Talk. You can find us at www.truthertees.com. Go to our store at shop.truthertees.com. We have T-shirts for sale. You buy 3 T-shirts, you can get a free copy of the official stories by Liam Sheff. And yeah, we had a jam-packed show today. 3 very smart, intelligent, strong women.
Yeah, very, very inspiring.
Yeah, it really, really was. We had Sarah Sotomayor at the top of the hour, and you can find Sarah's blog at sarahshealing.wordpress.com, where she talks about her
Sarah's Healing Journey.
Oh, I'm sorry, Sarah's Healing Journey.
.wordpress.com.
Yeah, I'll have a link to that because I don't want to mess that up. Sarah's Healing Journey.wordpress.com, and you can find out more about her experience after she received the Gardasil vaccine and her vaccine injury and what she's doing to heal. So that's her healing journey. And then we had Marcella Piper Terry, who we had to cut her, she had to go.
Yeah,
and so, yeah, we had to cut
so
that
much.
short. Yeah, we're going to have her back for like a full hour.
Yeah, something
because
like that.
I told you, she's like one of the most, or could possibly be the most knowledgeable person I know on vaccines.
Oh, really?
I mean, I just don't know.
You know a lot.
Not like her, though. I mean,
Yeah.
she just, because she's also she's been to medical school. She was had a master of psychology, and she had worked as a DAN practitioner for a while and healing children with vaccine injuries. And so she's extremely knowledgeable about vaccines. But she also knows about, which we wanted to talk about on this back to school episode, we wanted to talk about vaccine mandates and the mandate laws that there are to enter school. You have to have a certain number of vaccines, you have to have your immunizations, or you have to have an exemption. And so that's what her campaign is, and that's why I wanted to have her on for this show, because the vaxtruth.org, which we hope everybody goes there and donates if you can, because it's a nonprofit organization, and they make those billboards, no shots, no school, not true. And I think that's so brilliant.
Yeah.
And it's going to help a lot of people and save a lot of lives. If you look at the pictures that they have up there on the website, it's like they always put them like right in front of the school or like right by the Walgreens or something, like where they're trying to vaccinate people. Because people should know their rights, and that's the thing they don't tell you. Because as you know, I have children that are of school age, and most of the time they'll send you the stuff that says, oh, your kids need their vaccinations, and they don't give you any information that you can have an exemption. So even if people are kind of questioning it and going, I'm not sure, like the essay that I wrote last year when I talked to that girl who, remember that when they came to the door up in Northern California?
Yeah, they went door-to-door vaccinating people.
Yeah.
Creepy.
Yeah, they went door-to-door, but see, the thing was is that she didn't want her daughter to get the vaccine. It was for the Tdap. And her daughter was homeschooled, by the way, or not homeschooled, but she was on independent study. So she was practically homeschooled. She was almost never in school. It's like, so what's the point? They're saying, oh, well, we need you so that you won't infect the other kids, but she's not even in school. She's at home. Like, it was so stupid. Anyway, so when that happened, I had tagged Marcella with the essay that I wrote, and so she's working on getting a billboard in that district, the Natomas School District. So that's one of the places they're looking to fund a billboard, because they need one.
Yeah, that's awesome.
They need to inform those people. But the mother that I talked to, she didn't really, her daughter hadn't experienced any vaccine injuries as far as she was aware of, but she just felt like it was this sort of aggressive, the way that they were trying to push all these new vaccines all the time.
Yeah.
And so it just kind of had her kind of questioning whether or not how necessary it was. And the reason that they ended up coming to her door was because they never ever gave her any information on how to get an exemption. She didn't know really. She kind of knew that exemptions were available, sort of, but they didn't give her any forms. They wouldn't tell her. They didn't give her any information, and she was just kind of like, well, I don't want her to get it.
Yeah.
And they just didn't tell her that she had an option not to get it. So they ended up coming to the door with a mobile nurse and a syringe, saying, oh, we're going to vaccinate you right here at the door.
Having a gun, basically.
I know, she's like, get the fuck out of here. That's why she became like a hero on the internet, on the YouTube.
She like closed the door.
Yeah, she slammed the door. Yeah, and so she's awesome. But anyway, so it was just interesting how even people who haven't had the experience, most people who are in this sort of
truth movement about the vaccines have had a personal experience, but she didn't. She just felt, there's more. They were just closing in on us. She's like, every year it's something new, and it's starting to feel weird.
Yeah.
And
and I think a lot of what whatever you want to call them, the elite, the government, whatever they're doing, they're starting to push really hard, but it's starting to blow back in their face, which is really good. People are starting to wake up, and it's very interesting that people wake up in the strangest ways. Everybody's quote-unquote awakening experience is very different. Like Erica was saying that the German exchange student she was talking to just made her feel dumb. I had no idea. Like I was curious to know what her awakening experience was going to be, and I was just like, I heard her talk about the German student, and she was like, I was like, that's it? Like, some people doesn't take much. Some people take a lot. Some people are very stubborn or I don't know what you call it, for them to realize that, something strange going on. Something's not right. I think people feel that something's not right, but they don't really know what it is or where it's coming from. They know something's up instinctually, but
sometimes I understood kind of what she was saying when she was saying that her awakening process was happening as she was writing the speech, because she decided to write from the heart. And I feel like that happens to me sometimes when I'm writing about, my essays on my blog. I never mentioned my blog on the show. I write a blog, aidensrecovery.blogspot.com. I've never plugged my own blog. Anyway, but the blog...
that happened too. Can I plug
Virstyne, have your blog. Virstyne just got back from Taiwan, so she wrote the travel blog.
I have two, but I'll plug the Brave New Realm one, because that has more to do with what we're talking about.
Right.
So it's called Brave New Realm, blogspot.com, and I write about just moments in the awakening process and just being kind of like transitioning to this new way of thinking and how it affects me, and hopefully other people will be able to relate to it. I know we never plug our own blogs,
but on our website, on our Truth or Tease website, we have links back to our own personal blogs. But Aiden's blog that I read about our experience with his vaccine damage and his injury and the things that we've got to heal and stuff. But I understand that in the sense because sometimes I'll be writing it and I don't even know how I feel about it until I start writing it down. I know
something is there. Exactly. It doesn't unravel.
Right.
I feel that too. Because I don't really write every day, but I only write right now. I'm so busy. When I get a knot in my stomach or something that I'm like, something's there and it's trying to come out.
Exactly. And it comes out. And then it just sort of manifests. And sometimes when I start writing, I'll start crying. I'll get very emotional because I'm sort of unleashing it, and it's coming out all at once. And I mean, some of the essays that I write, even when I read them back, I get emotional because I feel like I relive it.
So you kind of forget what you write. Sometimes I do that. I'll read stuff and I know I wrote it, but I'm I don't really remember writing it. It's so weird.
It's really strange, and I don't know. Yeah, sometimes I trip out. I go, really, wow, but I get. It's almost like my blog knows more about how I feel than I do. You go through life and
you're a different monster.
Well, you go through life and you don't think about how you feel. Yeah. You're busy, like you say, and you're working. I'm cooking. I'm cleaning. I'm getting my kids ready to go back to school. I'm busy trying to clean the house and make sure everything's situated. So when they go back and I get even busier, I'll have time to do this and everything else. And so when you have a knot in your stomach, like you said, and then you sit down and you start writing, you go, oh, so this is how I feel. And then you go back and you read it, and I go, wow, that was how I feel. And then a lot of times it's how I still feel. I just don't think about it all the time. So it's interesting. And she said that she was writing it, and that was sort of her awakening process. As she was actually writing her speech, she decided to write from the heart. And she's a very intelligent lady and has a very interesting life, it sounds like.
An interesting life ahead of her, too.
Yeah, I'm really glad we connected with her. Yeah. We did this back to school show. So everybody, go back to school, but think critically. Think critically about vaccines. Think critically about the system.
Yeah, definitely. You said it.
Yeah, so that's what this was really about. It was about going back to school, but keep your head on a swivel. Think about it seriously and critically. So, thank you, as always, with peace, truth, and love.
Peace, truth, and love. Bye-bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
We are more than robotic bookshelves, conditioned to blurt out facts we were taught in school. We are all very special. Every human on this planet is very special. So aren't we all deserving of something better? Of using our minds for innovation rather than memorization, for creativity rather than futile activity, for rumination rather than stagnation. We are not here to get a degree to then get a job so we can consume industry-approved placation after placation. There is more and more still. The saddest part is that the majority of students don't have the opportunity to reflect as I did. The majority of students are put through the same brainwashing technique in order to